Thank you for tuning in to Chompin at the Bit. This is episode 33. We're going to be taking a look at college football. I'm going to react to some things that I noticed over the weekend. Take a look at the Big Ten as they have their opening weekend. See which teams look good, which ones may have struggled. Also take a look at some of the top teams in the country and see how they did as well. Were any of them on upset alert? And also going to take a look at, is there possibly a team that, some of you may not be looking at who by the end of the season could make a strong case to get into the top four? And even with that, will there be another reason based off of this team for the playoff to expand past four? Then, of course, also going to look at the World Series, as the series was 2-2 going into the pivotal Game 5 on Sunday night. And now we're going to take a look at which team's on the brink of elimination and whether or not this series is going to end or not. So with that, we'll go ahead and start right there with the World Series. So, like I said, it was 2-2 going into Game 5. The Dodgers ended up pulling out the win 4-2. And from watching the game, what I noticed was the Rays have to stop letting the Dodgers get going early. I swear for like the past couple of games now, Dodgers, when they've come up to bat, whether it's, leading off the game top of the first inning or batting in the bottom of the first inning, they are always putting runs on the board in the first inning. And I feel like the Rays need to stop that, because yes, I get it. The Rays have shown the ability to, come back and either tie the game or sometimes take a lead late in the game after being down. But I feel like they're playing with fire too much. And Game 5, ultimately, they couldn't come back from being, because they went into the second inning already down 2-0 as Betts led off the game with a double. Seager came right after him, and Betts got his double on a full count 3-2 pitch, and he hit a liner to the left off the base of the wall, and he was standing at a double. Then Seager came up right after him, pulled a single through the shift on the right side. Betts scored from second, and Seager is on first. Then later that inning, Bellinger hit a ball to, I think, into the shift, but into like short right, where Tampa Bay likes to put that second baseman, swing him out into the shallow outfield. And Seager was able to score later on in the inning. So they were already up 2-0. They had Kershaw on the mound. Kershaw had a great outing in Game 1. And he followed that up with another good outing. He went 5 2/3 innings. He could have went longer, but Dave Roberts decided to pull him after a couple of pitches into the sixth inning. A key play for the Rays, they had a guy, Manuel Margot, on third base in the fourth inning, and there was 2 out. For some reason, he tried to steal home. He was thrown out at the plate. And, the one thing that they tell you when you play baseball, never make the third out at third or at home. Especially when there's no guarantee he was going to make it. Like, I get it, Kershaw's a lefty, so his back is to you on third base. But, yeah, it was just an easy throw to the plate. They got him. Killed a chance at maybe getting a timely 2-out base hit to bring in the run anyway. I get it, the Rays have played that way all year, being aggressive when they can, because especially against this Dodgers team, I think the Rays have the mentality that certain situations they have to try to manufacture runs, where in probably like the most unlikely of situations. But yeah, that was like a pivotal play. It killed probably the momentum that the Rays could have gained if Margot were able to score there. But like, I get it. I can't even be too mad at them for trying it. I mean, it's a play you don't see a lot, so sometimes if you have a guy who's fast enough and Margot is a speedster, you might be able to catch a pitcher off guard where they're standing there in their stretch, especially with 2 out. Most pitchers aren't wired to take a look over at third because with 2 outs, all you have to do is worry about the batter at the plate. So, like the more I think about it, the more I talk about it, I'm actually not mad at him for trying it. But Arosarena, that, the Rays hitter that I've been talking about in the series, and when I previewed the series, I said he was the guy that you would have to watch on the Rays in the Rays lineup. Well, he got a hit in the second inning, which gave him the new leader, which made him the new leader of most hits in a single postseason, beating out Pablo Sandoval, the great San Francisco Giants third baseman of years ago, where I think Sandoval actually turned that postseason run into that big deal with the Red Sox, which he never lived up to, but still an accomplishment either way. So, with that, like I said, Kershaw went 5 2/3. The Dodgers bullpen came in with Dustin May, who came in right after Kershaw went 1 1/3 innings, and then the rest was history. Tampa Bay never really got much of a threat going. So now Tampa Bay's down 3-2 in the series. My original prediction was Dodgers in 6. So right now the series is playing kind of like I expected it. And I do believe that the series will end Tuesday night. I mean, of course, because that was my prediction. Of course, I'd like to be right, but I feel like if the Rays were able to win Game 5, then I think it would have been a 7-game series automatically. But now that they've lost Game 5, I don't know if they're going to be able to stop the momentum for the Dodgers. And like I said, Betts and Seager at the top of the lineup have been giving them fits, especially first inning of games. If it's not them, it's usually Justin Turner, who will either get a timely base hit or has hit a few home runs early in games in this series. So if the Rays can get through the first and the second inning without giving up any runs, then they might be in good shape for the rest of the way. But if it's another game where the Dodgers get out to a 2-0 lead before the Rays bat in the first, or whether they're the top of the second, then it could be a long night for the Rays where they might really start feeling that pressure. Because, what I've talked about with the NBA bubble and all that, when you get into elimination games, the pressure on the team that's down gets ratcheted up, as well as the team that's up, because there's pressure on them to close out the series. Like in this case, if the Rays are to win Game 6, you get a Game 7. As I've said many times, you get into a Game 7, anything can happen. So, like I said, tune in Game 6 Tuesday night. I know I will. I do plan on the series ending Tuesday night, so we will see. Now, I did say Mookie Betts is an MVP. I think he still can get it, but Corey Seager's making a strong case for himself to win it. So we'll definitely have to check that out. And if the series does end Tuesday night, then of course, we'll talk about it on here and kind of see how Game 6 plays out. Or if we're preparing for a Game 7, then we'll talk about that and see what either team needs to do to make sure that they do pull it out in a Game 7. But, that was just, quick little check-in on the World Series. But now to, the main topic of the episode, college football. And, with the Big Ten getting their opening weekend this weekend, I did watch some Big Ten football to see how these teams were going to look week one. So remember I gave you the top 4 teams, at least for me in the Big Ten. I told you Ohio State, Wisconsin, Penn State, Michigan. Well, Michigan/Minnesota, since they were playing each other, but I did put Michigan up there. So Wisconsin and Ohio State, they were dominant in their first game. Wisconsin blew out Illinois. I want to say it was 52-7. And Wisconsin's quarterback, Mertz, he went 20 for 21, so pretty much perfect. He threw for 5 touchdowns. He had 5 touchdowns. The defense only gave up 218 yards, 7 points, and only 8 first downs, so almost as many points as first downs. That's a pretty dominant performance to me. Yes, it was Illinois, but for a first game of the season, that's definitely a good start. So, Wisconsin looking good after week one. Ohio State, I talked about them. They're probably the favorite for the Big Ten and a favorite to probably land one of the top 4 spots in the playoff. They didn't disappoint opening weekend either. Justin Fields, the same, 20 for 21, 3 total touchdowns. He had 2 passing, 1 on the ground. He rushed for also like 54 yards on the ground, as he's a dual threat quarterback. And they beat Nebraska 45-14. So after this first week, those 2 teams right there definitely put on a show and doesn't put in a claim to be the top teams in the Big Ten. Penn State, who was a team that I did say was one of the top 4 as well, had a tough game against Indiana. Was not expected. I thought they'd have an easy time going up against the Hoosiers, but it turned into a very, very exciting game. Both teams played well. They went blow for blow. The game ultimately ended up in overtime, where Indiana pulled it off by going for 2. And it was a play with a little bit of controversy because, scrambling to the right, to the extreme right, diving for the pylon. And when I was watching it live, I thought he came up short because it kind of looked like, I think it might have been his knee, might have been out, or even his elbow hit the ground before he was able to touch the pylon with the football, because it did kind of look like his hand bounced off the ground into the pylon. But I guess Big Ten doesn't have that camera the NFL does, where that camera that Bill Belichick fought for all those years, where they can look down the goal line, and then they put a camera in that looks down the sideline, so that way you can see both the boundary and whether you cross the plane. In this case, if you hit the pylon, it doesn't matter because the pylon counts as crossing the goal line. So it was a bang play, and of course with the instant replay, really wasn't clear enough to overturn it. So Indiana gets the big win, big upset, one of the bigger upsets of the weekend. And Penn State's now looking at 0-1 and facing Ohio State next weekend. So a promising season could start off 0-2 right away. And in their shortened season, 2 losses will pretty much take Penn State really out of any consideration for, playoffs 4 or even New Year's 6, which I'll get into those in a little bit. But Notre Dame had their most impressive showing, at least to me. They beat Pitt 45-3, and it was just a mismatch. Notre Dame outgained Pittsburgh 434-162. That tells you all you need to know about the game. That's like utter dominance right there. And Notre Dame is that team that, every year there's analysts that want to put Notre Dame into the playoff four. Some years they've earned their way in. Other years it kind of seems like they get in on name recognition. See the Manti Te'o years? Remember that guy? But that year when they got into the playoff and then got embarrassed by, I think it was Ohio State. So, like I said, for Notre Dame, their statement game is still 2 weeks away at this point when they have to face Clemson. And Clemson had another big day. They took down Syracuse. It was a 47-21. Now, the line in that game was I think Clemson was a 48-point favorite. So Syracuse actually ended up, winning in terms of the spread. But I think it was more because Clemson took their foot off the gas after they got up big. So, Clemson still looks like the best team in the country. Trevor Lawrence still looks like the best quarterback in the country. Put those two together, that's why they're the favorite to win it all this year again. But not to be outdone, Alabama beat Tennessee. Alabama won that game 48-14. Alabama has gotten through their first part of the schedule where they had the tough Georgia game. Ultimately won that game. Now they're getting into some definitely winnable games before their Iron Bowl matchup with Auburn later in the season. And once again, with Auburn, it kind of depends on the year. Some years, by the time you get to the Iron Bowl, Auburn is a terrible team. Then there's other years where Auburn is actually a pretty good team by the time you get to the Iron Bowl, and then that matchup can go either way. So right now, a lot of these games between now and Iron Bowl, Alabama's just getting warmed up. Because like I said a couple episodes ago, Clemson and Alabama look like they're pretty much set in stone right now for the playoff four. Obviously, nothing happened this weekend to change any of that, so they're still 1-2 easily. But then, I guess to pay off the tease from early in the episode, there is a team that's kind of sitting under the radar. Not in one of the Power 5 conferences. Probably not one of the bigger name schools that you're thinking about, who might make a case. Might make a case by the end of the year to crash the party and get in to the top four if some of these teams up there really struggle this year. This is a team that's gonna need like a 2-loss Georgia, probably a 2-loss Notre Dame, Oklahoma State not to be undefeated in order for them to have any consideration. But Cincinnati. Now, Cincinnati went into the weekend going up against SMU. SMU was ranked 16th. Clemson's ranked 9th. Both teams were undefeated. It had the makings of a really close, tight game down to the wire. It was anything but that. Cincinnati put it on SMU. Wasn't close from beginning to end. Cincinnati won that game 42-13. So Cincinnati is now 4-0. They were ranked 9th. Haven't seen the new ranking yet, because I'm guessing they moved up from 9. They'd have to. Otherwise, that's just blatant disrespect. Actually, let me look at that real quick. So, Cincinnati is now number 7 in the country, which is perfect for them because so right now the top 4 is Clemson, Alabama. Ohio State is now number 3. Remember, I had Georgia at number 3. The AP had Georgia at number 4, but, Notre Dame is now 4 because Notre Dame was 3, at least in their poll. Georgia's now 5. Oklahoma State's at 6. Cincinnati 7. Oklahoma State is undefeated like Cincinnati is, but I don't know. I just think Cincinnati has a shot to leap over Oklahoma State at some point this year. And the rest of Cincinnati's schedule is not difficult for them. Not to say they won't have a hiccup here or there because, the American Conference, usually Memphis is kind of a player. Houston, you never know. And they still have those 2 games left. And there's also UCF. UCF's one of those teams who normally is ranked kind of middle of the pack, but this year, not yet. So, they have an outside shot going undefeated. I think probably because of their resume, they won't get any recognition for top 4. But I just think Cincinnati is going to be this year's Boise State. You remember back in the BCS days, Boise State would go 12-0, 11-1 every year. Always would be ranked like 6th, 7th, 6th, sometimes 5th. And there'd be some, talk out there about putting Boise into the national title game. But it never happened. They went to some good bowl games. They had the one that everybody remembers against Oklahoma where they won it. The Statue of Liberty play. The player goes and proposes to the cheerleader and all that. And I think Boise State was kind of a big reason why the BCS eventually was thrown away because Boise State never got a fair shot. Now that we're in the playoff system and it's only 4, I feel like teams like Cincinnati aren't going to get a fair shot either because with it only being 4, and I've talked about this, I think, episodes ago, but, just to rehash it, I'm not a big fan of just 4 playoff teams. One, you have 5 power conferences, so technically at least one conference is going to get screwed anyway. A lot of years, SEC looks to get 2 teams into the top 4, so then you might have a second conference get screwed. So you're clearly not going to do 5 just for the Power 5 conferences because then your playoff system looks stupid. I've always said 8 is probably the perfect place for them, but I could see them doing like a 6 first just to see. But I think if you go 8, you get your Power 5, you let your conference champion in, that's 5 spots right there. Then the other 3, do whatever you want. I don't care. You want to put a second SEC team in, boom, use one of those spots. You want a second ACC team, use one of the 3 spots. And then I think at least that way, one of those spots would go to a team like if Cincinnati goes undefeated, them. Or even this year, looking at like Oklahoma State, who's undefeated right now. Who's to say they can't run the table? And looking at their schedule, they have Oklahoma left on the schedule, but Oklahoma's ranked lower in the AP poll, so Oklahoma State will go into that game as the favorite. At least they should. But just looking on the list here, you have Ohio State may run the table. It's gonna push at this point like Georgia gets pushed out. So Georgia goes through the rest of their schedule, and their only loss is to an Alabama team that may run the table. You would think Georgia probably deserves a shot in the playoff. Notre Dame, who everybody wants to throw in there. If Notre Dame were able to, knock off a Clemson, let's say. They'd knock off Clemson, probably whatever they do the rest of the way, they would deserve to get in. You're not going to knock out Clemson for losing to the number 4 team in the country, so you'd want to keep them in. Alabama looks like a lock. So, especially with this year, it looks like there's some teams that could definitely put together a resume that's worthy enough of the top 4. So why not just expand the 4 to 8? You don't have to go any further than 8. You don't need to go to like 12 or 16. I think 8 is fine. Because most years, you'll probably get 8 qualified teams easy. Anything past that, then you're really starting to, let not mediocre, but like average teams in. But for Cincinnati, if you don't get in the top 4, at least you can get a New Year's Six Bowl, which is kind of a, consolation prize for some of these lesser known football schools. And by the New Year's Six, it's the Cotton Bowl, which is actually New Year's Eve. And then New Year's Day, you have Peach Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, the Orange Bowl. Then I think it's like January 3rd, you get the Sugar and Rose Bowl for the semifinals of the playoff. And then this year's championship game is in Miami at the Orange Bowl site. So, yeah. So, for Cincinnati, teams like that, BYU's undefeated right now. Down around number 10, 11 in the AP poll. BYU's another team, could go undefeated, will not get any recognition for the playoff. So, once again, there's an opportunity for the NCAA to do what's right. We all know NCAA, they do whatever they want. I mean, just look at the conferences. This is probably a topic for another episode, but some of these teams and some of these conferences just don't make any sense. I don't get it, but NCAA lets these schools move and all that kind of stuff, and I don't know. A lot of it doesn't make sense. So yeah, I think another episode I will talk more about that, about how I feel the conferences should look. And, since whenever, NCAA doesn't want to do something, they say it's in the interest of the students. But what's the interest when you're... Just take a look at the ACC. That's one of the bigger conferences. Like, you have BC and Syracuse in there, while pretty much the rest of the conference is down here in the South. So, if the Big East was still a thing, you would think Syracuse and BC would have been perfectly fine to stay in the Big East. And then you pull in some other teams from, Northeast area or Mid-Atlantic. But, of course, with that, the Big East never got any recognition. So, the bigger name Big East teams started pulling out and, conference realignment and all that stuff. Too much to get into right now. But hopefully they get their act together, expand the playoff to allow your Cincinnati's, your BYU's, your... I don't know, some other school. UCF, those years when UCF had high flying offense, would go like 11-1 every year, and they would kind of get into a New Year's Six Bowl, but would never really serious contender for the playoff. So that's just my 2 cents on that. But with that, that's my look back at the college football weekend. This will become a regular thing on here. Same way I do with the NFL, I'm going to do with college football. I'll probably do like my college football reaction on it's Monday night when I record. That you get that episode Tuesday morning, and then when I record Tuesday night for your Wednesday episode, you'll get my NFL reaction. So, like I said before, now with some sports season ending, I can now focus on a little bit more, diverse selection of sports. So, there you are. So, if you're new, hope you liked what you heard. So you can like, subscribe, follow, depending on wherever you are listening to your podcast. And as I've said, Chompin at the Bit is on pretty much all the major platforms. Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts. It's on Spreaker. So definitely, you can go back, listen to some of the previous 32 episodes. Drop a comment, rate the show, whatever. And then to those of you who've been with me most of the time, appreciate you as well. And thank you for all the support. So, be safe out there. And I will definitely catch you next episode. Oh, I didn't even let you know where we're going with that. So, episode 34, the next one will be NFL review. I'll go over my picks from week 7. Look at any major storylines. And yeah, I think there's something else. Can't remember right now. But my bold prediction. Duh, that's what it was. We'll see how my bold prediction went. Just a little tease on that. Didn't go as well as I thought it would, but we'll get more into that in tomorrow's episode. So thanks again. Be safe. Catch you next episode. All right.